my fellow comic book collectors, it's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is a response video. So I haven't done these for a while, so it's always fun to do these response videos where I watch other YouTubers and I like to respond to what they have said about the hobby, and I think there's some really valuable things that can be gained from having these kind of back and forth discussions. And really this is a response video to two other channels. Sticky Goose Comics and to Momo Ono Comics. Momo Ono Comics was the one that actually originally created the video where he was discussing whether or not comics are a good investment. And Sticky Goose did basically he just replayed the video, but and commented a little bit about it. So he did a slight response to it, and he sort of agreed with the points of Momo Ono Comics. So Momo Ono Comics was talking about the liquidity of comics, was talking about the fact that we don't even sell our comics half the time, was talking about how money is tied up in comics, and was talking about generally whether or not comics are a good investment, you know, because they have this kind of a ripple effect where if you look at big investments like gold or silver or oil or something like that, and lumber he mentioned, they are pretty big industries, and you know, a disruption in that industry, it's like a rock in an ocean. Whereas in comics, any disruption, it's like a rock in a puddle, which is, you know, going to have much bigger impact on the market. And those are all valid points. But I figure, hey, you got to give some counters. You got to give some counterpoints. And that's what this is all about. So I would like to say thank you to both Sticky Goose and Momo Comics. And I will actually link to both in the description of this video, so you can check their videos out on it. But I'm going to give you my counter perspective of why comics are a great investment. And the first one is tangibility. Now, when you buy stocks or Bitcoin or some kind of intangible item, you really don't have that physical connection to whatever it is that you're buying. And because you don't have that physical connection, it's something you can't really enjoy. Just like art and comics, you can really enjoy those because you have them. You have a tangible object that you can enjoy, and part of the collecting value is the fact that you can enjoy your what you're collecting. So that tangibility has a value to it. You know, you might think of the money being locked away in those items, but you're actually enjoying the items that you're you know, you have the money invested in it. It's sort of like your house. Your money is locked inside your house. You can't sell your, you know, you can't just say, oh, well, I have so much money locked in this house, I got to flip it or sell it because money's locked in my house. Well, you need somewhere to live. You need, you know, and the better your house, the better you live, right? So it's just with comics and comic collecting, it's the better your collection, the better you feel about your collection, the happier you are. And that happiness has a value. It means that you're more productive. It means that you can, you know, feel better about your life in general. And that has merit and value. The other thing about intangible assets, especially Bitcoin, this is a real thing with Bitcoin, is they can get lost. My brother, for example, he one of his projects he did work for, they paid him in Bitcoin, and I think they gave him 1 Bitcoin. So he's not like a Bitcoin millionaire or anything like that, but he got 1 Bitcoin, and it was like, at the time it was like only a few thousand. Now it's worth many thousand. But he lost the key to his wallet, so he cannot access that Bitcoin. It is basically a lost currency. And I actually have a whole bunch of digital currency, cryptocurrency as well. I can't access it. I have no idea how to access it. I have like 40,000 fast coin, which is another currency, because I was doing their marketing. And, you know, it's currency that I can't access. It's basically vapor. I can't get to it. There's no way to enjoy it. I can't do anything with it. And that investment is basically lost. It might be worth more. It might have gone up. It might be if I had my wallet access, I could probably, you know, move it around very nicely. But because it's easy to lose that access, and I don't have a tangible thing that I can just hold on to and say, here, this is proof that I own this, then it can disappear very, very easily. The same can actually even happen with money, fiat currencies, because fiat currency, believe it or not, most of it is actually digital nowadays, and it can get lost and it can get shifted around where you can actually lose that currency. So money isn't as tangible as you might want it to be, and sometimes having that tangible asset actually has merit in itself, just because it protects you from any kind of bank fraud or any kind of the problems with the security around digital items. So just something to think about, that tangibility is a merit in itself, both in enjoyment and in the security of that investment. The next thing is growth. Now, everyone kind of knows this idea that comics, in many ways, it's a hobby. we enjoy our hobby, and it is one thing that you put the money into that hobby, but this hobby actually has an upside where if you put $100 into it, normally in a hobby you spend $100. Like if you go to the gym, that could be your hobby. Sure, you're getting into shape, and that's a great thing. But that $100 is gone at the end of the day. You can't just say, oh well, I can pull that money back out and get 110 later. There's no growth. It's just money that you put in without any return. So with comics, you put the money into it, and in the future it will generally go up. And the rate of return on comics is usually around 10%, which is fairly high in terms of investments. If you look at comics as a whole, generally actually outperforms things like the S&P, which is pretty good investment in many ways. The other thing is, as I said, like with other hobbies, you're not really getting that return on investment, but it's not something you can use as a way to not only have something that's pleasurable and fun as a hobby, but something that you can convert into cash if needed. And part of the hobby is that interest that we have in terms of the growth. Like, when we talk about the hobby, when we promote the hobby, we get other people into the hobby, and that those new collectors are the ones that will become the ambassadors and the ones that will add value to it in the future. So that there is always this growth to the hobby. It might seem sometimes that things are dire, like, oh, everyone's leaving the hobby, going to the next hobby, but there's always going to be those people like myself who have been collecting for many, many years. And one of the things that I noticed, especially doing my interviews, is that there are phases that people go through in their life. And generally what'll happen is people really collected comics when they were young. They get married, they have kids, and they stop collecting for a little while, and then they get back into collecting. Usually when their kids are a little older and they have more free time to actually enjoy the hobby, and they actually have more money that they can spend on the hobby. Well, that kind of cycle means that there's opportunity for growth in that people who liked a certain comic when they were young will probably be willing to spend money on that comic later on. So that growth can be seen in that cycle where one of the things I used to do was collect comics from earlier ages, like things that I liked as a kid, like nostalgic buys, like Indiana Jones or Rick and Morty or Beavis and Butthead, or things like that had that sort of nostalgic feel to it from my childhood. So those books generally have performed very well. So things to think about, that growth is a really important aspect of the comic book collecting hobby. The next thing is actual opportunity. I always love this idea of comics being a real opportunity. So comics are an increasing investment because they offer the potential on ROI. I kind of mentioned that a little bit, but there's this cool thing about the hobby, and this is part of the thing that a lot of people really enjoy about the hobby is the hunt. You go out there, certain comics are kind of cool, and you can go out and find them in the wild where people don't necessarily appreciate the comic, or they don't understand the comics, or they don't know enough about the comics, and you find that dollar bin buy, and there's that, wow, this is not a dollar bin worth item. I just recently found something where it was the first appearance of Wendy, the Good Witch, and I paid $20 for it. It's a $300-400 comic. That is an opportunity within the industry, and sometimes it's not even just that. You can find things where you buy, key characters. That these are key characters that might be worth only $1 now, but in the future they get hot and they become like $300-400 characters. So that there's that opportunity where there's a really small amount of investment that you have to make in certain books, and with a big upside. like, and if you're a savvy collector, you kind of learn these patterns that, oh, this is going to be a pretty cool character. This, there's some opportunities here. And if you're buying comics on a regular basis, like modern comics, those opportunities appear all the time. We just had one recently with what was it? Punchline, or Batman Who Laughs. There's characters that people will sort of think, oh, those are really cool. Those books will become super valuable. Generally, much more than cover price. They start out at $5, but now they're like hundreds of dollars. So there are those opportunities that you don't get in many hobbies. You don't get that in your stocks. Sure, you'll get it if you invest in penny stocks and that stock goes to being $1 stock. It can happen, but it's that opportunity really is unique to the hobby, and I think that is something that makes the hobby very fun. I actually see that opportunity not just in the modern collecting, but in the golden age. I collect a lot of golden age, and I find that buying like pulps, or buying Matt Baker, or buying these key artists that were sort of a little bit under the radar, like now are pretty broadly known and pretty mainstream. I was buying David Stevens, for example. That's a more modern artist, and I bought all of his covers because I liked his art. And all of a sudden, they do a Drawn to Perfection documentary about him. Those books have gone through the roof. There's that opportunity, and it's about being a savvy collector, which I think most collectors, just by sheer enjoyment of the hobby, the more they enjoy it, the more they become savvy. They actually can find these opportunities much more readily than what maybe that's the real interesting thing about this hobby. Because it's a hobby, because it's something where you can be passionate about it, you can get excited, this is really cool, that passion really is what makes the hobby fun. And that doesn't really exist with stock market and all these other kind of investments, which are kind of for the most part pretty boring. Well, in my opinion, maybe some people are passionate about stocks. I imagine Warren Buffett would totally disagree on this point. But the entertainment value of doing that deep hunt, or finding the latest cool spec, actually makes the hobby fun, but also is what trains us as collectors to buy the best books. And we can find real opportunities in the hobby. So I really see that as a big point that might be missed by most collectors, that we are becoming, as we learn the hobby more and more, we become savvy buyers, and we buy things that will have a big upside. And as you get good at something, you generally pick more wins than losses, and that's really the success of seeing the hobby as an investment. The next thing that's kind of an interesting one is business. A lot of the time, and I'm not this way myself, so I'm sort of speaking about other people on this one. Comics, as collectors, we like to buy and sell, and we like to trade. Often, I'm not in the selling part of that. I really feel weird selling my comics, but I have actually sold in the past. And there is that by a business aspect. And if you're entrepreneurial, you can do extremely well with the comic book hobby, because what you can do is you can really make it into a business where you buy at a certain price because you know that this is a good opportunity. You buy, just like I was saying in the previous point, you buy that dollar bin book and you flip it for 2, 3, 4 times what you paid, and or 20 times what you paid. Sometimes it can be up that much of an upswing on it. And you use that money to reinvest into your hobby and you make it a business. And I think of people like Ryan of Automatic Comics. He has done extremely well buying and selling comics because he uses his knowledge to find those deals, and then he uses his knowledge to also find those buyers. As you get better versed in the hobby, you know people that will pay the big money for the books, and then you can use that money to buy other cool books that other people will buy. It's a real business opportunity. And I know a bunch of people, like Stray Flexing is another good example of that, who really do make this hobby into a business. And they collect. They're still collectors, but they have that business acumen or the entrepreneurial way of thinking of it, where they can really generate an income from it and enjoy the hobby while making it into a business. So that is something that not many hobbies have. And comics, it really does have that, especially with the internet. Because before, one of the problems with the hobby is you were really limited to your storefront. Nowadays, you have the ability to access the internet, build a whole bunch of connections. Like this channel that I'm on right now, I have 3,000 potential buyers, if I really wanted to go out and try to sell to them, who are interested in comics that would probably buy any comic that I recommend, or if I try to sell the comics in my collection. So the point is, there is that business aspect where you can make those connections very easily nowadays and sell the books, because you have people that will buy them. It's a really interesting hobby that way. And the more digital this hobby becomes in terms of the way we interact with each other, the more that liquidity of the hobby will exist, and the business element of the hobby will exist, where we can really just connect people between the books and the buyers and the sellers and all that and you can just sort of move them around fairly easily. So that's a real important part of this whole thing, that this is a real business opportunity within the hobby. The last thing that I'd like to talk about, and this is a weird term, this is a term that I made up, so this is not a business term, this is not like something you can look up in a book and say, oh, he's using this term. Like liquidity, for example, is a term that people understand. Well, this is a term that I made up. Okay, this is called flow. And flow, which is my 5th point, is something which is watching where the money goes. So generally what you'll see is when the comic boom bust happened, you saw flow from modern age comics and silver and all that to the golden. Okay, there was that flow of money from one sector of the hobby to another. But also flow exists within the comic boom period as well, where you get sports cards enthusiasts, you get other hobbyists coming into the hobby. Money's flowing into the hobby. So this flow is a concept of money moving within the hobby. But the interesting thing about it, when you think about flow, is the idea of big money. If you're rich, it's not that you just, somebody gave you billions of dollars just because they wanted to give you billions of dollars. Usually you've done something relatively smart and you know how to make money. That's only the people that are wealthy generally know what they're doing, and they generally do things smart with their money. Generally, I can think of lots of people that are exceptions to that rule, but generally, people that are smart with money become rich. And the smarter you are, the more likely you are to stay rich, okay? And that's really important thing. But adding this concept of flow to that, understand, where are these rich people putting their money? Where are they putting that investment? You know, if you have like $1 million, where are you putting that money? Are you putting it in the bank? Are you putting it in stocks? Are you putting it in what type of asset are you creating with that money that you can protect your investment? You protect that money, that value. And what we're seeing lately is records still happening for big books where people are spending several $1 million to buy an Action 1, to buy Superman 1, to buy Batman 1, to buy X-Men 1, to buy all these big books. They're putting millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars, into those assets. And they don't do that because they are like always, you know, oh, I love this book, I have to buy it. You know, they're buying it because they see it as a good place to park their money. Generally, if you have $1 million to spend, you're not just spending it willy-nilly. You actually park the money knowing that it is a good place to keep the money when other things might not be as secure as you might think. You know, the overall economy is pretty shaky. So seeing that flow from other types of investments that they could have made into comics is kind of a good sign about the merits of the hobby as an investment. So those are my 5 things. So tangibility, growth, opportunity, business potential, and flow. So those are my 5 counter arguments to to both Sticky Goose and Momo Ono comics. I recommend you check out their videos, see what their points are. They have very valid points as well, but it's always good to have that devil's advocate. And I am an ambassador for comics and comic collecting, so I really did feel that I had to give my side of the story. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think. Do you agree with my points? I hope you do. And what other points could be made about why it's a good investment, why it's a bad investment? I'd love to hear those points in the comments below. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.